Hi everyone, this is the Broken Meeple. Win or lose, I'm going to be honest with you. This is completely out of the blue for me. I pretty much know very little about this game before I was given a copy of it, so thank you for that. I believe it's a first-time design from Sean Lee. This is Cytress, which I got from Good Games Publishing. So this one basically is supposedly an area control game with a little bit of resource management, where you're trying to get your citizens down from a bottom level, of, I don't know, the suburbs, the underground, or whatever it's called, up to the top of Stratos, which is effectively like the city in the sky. I believe Alita Battle Angel had a similar plot line, and probably that, what was that, Matt Damon sci-fi film Elysium, with that similar plot? But basically, we're down here, we want to be up there, and get victory points for doing so. Essentially a Kickstarter that's due to fulfill. You probably have never even heard of it before, so let's allow me to do this speedy review and cover it.
Get on with it.
So in Cytress, you are trying to get your people to the top end of Stratos, or have an effective control of the underground area set in basically a dystopian cyberpunky future, where you are trying to access Stratos via these waste tubes. Whoever controls access to the waste tubes will have some, scoring potential, and whoever gets to the top of this will also have some scoring potential. The way it works is that you have 3 car figures as well as your standee, and a player board, which you'll notice has a bunch of sort of neon coloured lines sort of dotted across it in various ways. These represent different ways that you can tweak your income engine, shall we say. So phase 1, first of all, you get income. The idea is that you have a basic income stream in the yellow section here, and it might get you a particular resource. But the idea is that as you collect cards throughout the game, you'll be able to add to these respective sections and they will benefit you. So the yellow one, for example, if you place it on here, will give you additional income streams that you collect in this particular phase. In phase 2, you can send your little avatar out to the different factions where you will basically gain resources based on your standing with that faction. However, again on your little chart, there is a section for the privateer, which essentially means that if you place more blue cards next to this particular line, when opponents send their avatar out to a space, you will gain resources for that particular income stream as well as them. So you're essentially earning on other players' turns, kind of something like in a case of like Space Base or something like that. And in phase 3, you have these cars, which are effectively workers, which you send out to different worker spots to do other actions. So also on here, you can send the car out to these spaces to collect more of these cards. So these cards are going to be laid out by each faction, free on display. You can basically go to a faction and say, I fancy this card, and add it to your little income stream. In phase 3, you have these little cars which you can send out to different worker spots. So on here, you can send them out to buy more of these cards. Some of them will be on display, you can buy them and add your little income engine. But you also have some spaces over here. So you have the Stratolites themselves. This is where you can go to effectively find a way to access the top of this by use of these cards. So these cards have different resource requirements telling you that if you spend X amount of this type of resource, you can put a waste tube down on, let me get the actual board because that's probably going to be somewhat useful. Here we go. So for example, if I take this one, if I spend a lot of the weapons orange resource, I can place a waste tube down on the yellow section, and depending on what level I want to access, whether it's the bottom level, middle level, or top level, it will be 1, 2, or 3 waste tubes high. So effectively, this is the access point. Obviously, it costs more resources to go higher up. But also, you have worker spaces down here. So you can meet the merchant and do a trade, of which you have a way to make the trade ratios more in your favor on your income stream, again with more cards. But then you also have a way to take first player tokens, so you reserve these cards. You can take bounty cards, which are kind of like endgame scoring objectives, or you can meet the renegade, which is an alternate way to drop waste tubes on the board, but it's differing in terms of its cost. Like, it's slightly better to go above, but it's a bit easier to do this one. It's like more flexibility, more reward, that kind of thing. In phase 4, you simply reset and go again, but what you're effectively trying to do is get your markers, these little things, on the board so that they surround the waste tubes. Because if you have more than anybody else, you control the waste tube, and at the end of the game, that will reflect scoring. Because at the end of the day, you can't go up the waste tube to Stratos if you don't physically control it. It's a bit like the, what's that space faction in Dune or whatever that basically controls the warp tunnel or something. It's like, yeah, it's all well and good saying you own all the spice on this planet, but if you can't get from A to B with it, then what's it going to matter? But also, you have scoring potential for Stratos. So if you have your markers on the different levels here, they will score points just by being on these levels. But there's also some extra scoring criteria for various aspects of the game that you can do based on whether you have presence up there or not. And that's the game kind of in a nutshell. You basically acquire these cards, build up your little income stream in any way you see fit, whether it's straight up income, what other people get you, your trading, or discounts on other actions, and keep going until you get to the end of the game, and then see who controls the most areas down here, total up your points from here, and see who wins.
Everybody got that?
Not a lot of rules overall, and the book probably makes it look more complicated than it actually is, but when you actually get down to it, the rulebook is actually not that difficult to understand, at least this particular version. I heard that the early one was a little bit more fiddly, but this one, you know, I've seen better, but I've seen a lot worse, frankly. And there's enough pictorial examples to kind of get the idea of what you're doing. I mean, there's a full example turn right there, which I particularly like. And even then, the graphic design in this game is not half bad, really. I mean, the resources are clearly laid out. You know, it's easy to see what these particular actions do. It's just basically saying you get rewards for being with that faction. And even the other scoring criteria here, you can kind of figure out what most of it is without even having to check for it. So honestly, the game is relatively easy to get into, even if the book kind of makes it a little long-winded, shall we say. Production quality is not bad. It's kind of okay. I mean, I thought this whole thing was going to be a gimmick. It's basically a big cardboard structure, a bit like the Everdell tree. But it's actually pretty easy to put together from game to game. Obviously, it won't store like this, but all you got to do is just basically slide those two pieces into each other and then put like that, and you're done. So it's pretty straightforward. Although, of course, when you're sat around a table and trying to, you know, get 4 or 5 of you in a place, you've obviously got to put this somewhere where people can actually see it. Now, you don't have to see too much on this thing. You only have to see how many resources it costs to get the tubes out, how many points you get at the end of the game, and the other scoring condition. Now, you can get that from the rulebook if you really want to, but as long as you can see that, it's not too bad, and it's not really a big deal as to how many of each player's markers is on each level, because at the end of the day, you're scoring. It's not like an area control dominance thing. But as long as you can read these cards, you're usually doing all right. But I thought this was going to be, like, you know, cumbersome or hard to use. It's a gimmick. Yes, it didn't need to be like this. You could have easily just had a player board with the different levels on. It would have been perfectly simple, but they wanted to make it look a bit more interesting and give that sort of thematic feel. So fine, they've put it in. It doesn't get in the way, but it's not really assisting with it either. The theme is meant to be a kind of cyberpunky dystopian thing. As I say, the plot of trying to get from the bottom to the top is pretty much ripped straight out of Elite or Battle Angel, so I wonder if the designer actually had some inspiration on that part. And funny enough, I've only seen the movie. I haven't actually seen the OVA that's based on. So if you're a fan of anime and you tell me to watch the Elite or Battle Angel OVA, then get your notes in the comments and let me know, all right? Because I do want to watch some old school anime in some cases. But, you know, the theme is okay. It looks like a cyberpunky thing, but at the end of the day, you could retheme this to just about anything that would just about work. But you got the neon sort of light patterns on all this. You know, you've got an art style which I think is pretty much a carbon copy of what Cyberpunk Edge Runners looked. If you ever watched that on Netflix, if you haven't, seriously, it's a really good series. But it's got that very similar art style across. So I mean, it looks the part, but there's nothing to write home about. The most interesting component, other than this weird structure, is probably the waste tubes themselves, which at least look interesting. They're plastic and they stack on top of each other in different levels, so they're fine. But yeah, it's not exactly amazing for what was a Kickstarter, but hopefully it was a cheap Kickstarter. The actions themselves are fine, really. I mean, this game doesn't necessarily bring much new to the table per se. You know, the whole I've got area control around these little points. Okay, we've seen that before. These action spaces are nothing particularly exciting. It's just a case of you go here to get resources and you go here to buy cards, and getting your people up here again, it's just points. You know, the more you get up here, the more points you get, and the more area control you have here, the more points you get. So it's kind of bare bones, really. It's not bringing it's not particularly innovative. The main highlight of the game that I will say is basically creating this. This is quite a neat little idea, because I like the graphic design in particular with some of this, because when you're trying to learn the game, the phase numbers are dotted all over the place. So you can see phase 3, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. You can see phase 1 on this bit here. You can see phase 1 there. You can see phase 2, and then you can see phase 3 on the other two. So these 4 quadrants affect different things in the game, but I love the fact that they put the phase number on it. So whenever you get to a phase, say, right, we're in phase 3 travel, and then you can look at your thing and go, oh, that's relevant for this. And, you know, right, phase 1, collect your income. Which one's my income? Oh, the one that says phase 1 next to the income bit. All right, cool. And I like that, because it just makes it a lot easier for new players to learn it. But This is definitely the highlight, because all of these cards are effectively the same sort of thing. They have the neon lines with the resource markers on them. They've also got faction icons, which they call gaining intel. It basically lets you muck around on the area control map with other players, you know, a little bit of interaction here and there, and potentially do some scoring at the end of the game for the bounty cards. But for the most part, you're grabbing these because they are going to bolster these particular income streams. And, you know, income is nothing new. I like the fact that you can make the trades better for yourself, because that makes that space particularly lucrative. Getting discounts is never a bad thing. You know, if I can discount credits a ton, then basically every action I do that requires credits suddenly becomes a lot easier. But I particularly like the privateer one. The privateer one where you take the blue cards, and where other people go, you get that bonus. So if you know that another player is particularly focused on one type of resource, you might be like, well, okay, let me grab that blue card there, because it's going to get me one of those resources every time they no doubt go and get the resources themselves. And it just means that you're getting a little bit extra on top of your own income stream. And I would like more games to start doing this kind of thing, where it's not just what you achieve that gets you the income. You know, there's got to be things that you can grab where if somebody does something, you get a little bonus. I mean, that's always a welcome kind of thing in the game. But yeah, this is definitely the highlight. This is what is kind of like, it's, I can't really say it's unique. I suppose it's kind of unique in the way it works. So yeah, we'll call it the unique selling point for this game. You know, this is pretty much like the highlight of it. Carrying on with that whole graphic design and ease of play thing, I like the player boards as well. I mean, yeah, like I said, the components are nothing to write home about, but I like the fact that at the bottom it tells you how everything scores in the game. Really easy to reminder. You've got resource tracks for all the different things. You just put a marker on and it tells you what the cost is for the different levels of waste tube that you got up here, so you don't even have to refer to this. It tells you on your board. And then it's got phase 1, income. Here's the resources. Phase 2, scout districts, avatar. Go to that particular type of space. Phase 3, free cars where you put your standees. These are the actions you can do, and you can see the same icon on the spaces. This is just I mean, I recently did Voynich Puzzle, okay? You know, I recorded that one, and I had an absolute like brain aneurysm going over the impracticalities for trying to learn that game, and how it made like death by 1,000 cuts, tried to make everything so irritating in that one. This is like the carbon copy, sorry, but this is the flip on its head opposite end of the spectrum here, because you know, this one goes out of its way to make it pretty easy to get on with. You know, I love player boards that tell you most of the rules you need to know on the player board. You know, it's only small, but it tells you every useful piece of information you need. You know, it doesn't go into massive detail over what gain intel means or send Stratos means. You still need to know the rules to some extent, but it's a memory jogger. It's one of the perfect memory joggers that you can get. You don't even really need a player aid for this. You know, the player aid is effectively your board, and the iconography in this game is pretty straightforward. Most of it is just resource icons that you don't need to have a separate iconography guide either. So ease of play and graphic design is kind of top notch, I think, for me. You know, yes, the game's not the most complex game ever, but hey, it's doing its best.
This is the way.
The solo mode is fine. I mean, you can play this with 1 to 5 players. I don't recommend playing this with 5. 5 is too much. There's too much going on in this area control. The game outstays its welcome a bit with 5. Solo is okay. It's not really the setting I would want to play it on, but it's fine. You basically go through like the different phases here, and it does different actions based on what cards it gets. It's not too difficult to learn on top of the multiplayer game, although I do recommend you do a run through first before you tackle the solo mode. But solo is not really the way I would play this. I feel like the solo is kind of added on at the end. You know, if you're going to play like an area control game where people can get in each other's faces, you want to play with opponents, really. And the map will scale based on player count, so it can work with 2 players. But I think this is mainly going to be like a 3 or 4 player game. 5 is just that one step too far. 1 and 2 is okay, but I think really you're looking at 3 and 4. Get 3 to 4 players down here, bit of contention on the map, a little bit of interaction there. You know, a bit more to gain from the privateer cards, for example, because obviously the more people that are in the game, the more that's going to trigger. In a 2-player game, it's not going to trigger very often. And yeah, it just adds that little bit. So I would certainly more recommend this for multiplayer.
I don't think any of us expected him to say that.
So Cytress is not like the newest type of area control we've seen. The theme is a little pasted, but it looks the part. This is a bit of a gimmick, but it looks, you know, looks the part and functions fine. It's definitely better for sort of 2 to 4 player, certainly 3 to 4 player, I would say, but bearing in mind that 5 players will just take way too long. I mean, the game shouldn't take you more than 90 minutes to 2 hours with a 3 to 4 player game. Taking longer than that is definitely outstaying its welcome and generating a bit of downtime, so I don't recommend 5. Solo is fine, it works, I just think it's better multiplayer, but at least you've got it there as an option. Really, the main thing that this game is bringing to the table is this whole income stream with the cards. Granted, that is kind of the main part of the game alongside the area control. The area control is nice and simple, the maps will be slightly different each game, so the colours are going to be in different spots, so that's neat. But it's really these card bits that I quite like. You know, the idea that you've got all the different cards and it, you know, depending on whether you focus on one particular quadrant, it's going to make your income better, your opponent income better, like what your opponents give you for privateer, you know, your discounts, your trade values, all of these are important. It's just a case of how long do you spend grabbing these cards versus actually trying to get up into Stratos like you should be. It's a neat little game. It's nothing groundbreaking. It's not going to break records. It's not going to be the newest hotness or anything, but I enjoyed this. It's good. It does a lot to make it relatively easy to get into. I like the graphic design. I like the player board memory joggers. I mean, as I say, this is not death by 1,000 cuts. This is the opposite. It's doing every little thing that I think more publishers need to do in games to make life a bit easier, to make it, make it user friendly. And I got to applaud it for that. So I'm giving Cytress a respectable 7 out of 10. It's good, but it's not great, it's not amazing. This isn't going to break records, it's just going to be a decent, solid area control game with, you know, a nice little look to it, simplistic rules, and a cool little card play system. It does the job, probably a bit oversized for what it needs to be, but, say, not a bad first effort, gotta give credit. So that's it for me on this episode of The Broken Meeple. If you like what you see, then please thumb it up on YouTube or Board Game Geek, wherever you see it. Let me know your comments down below. Was it different with the rulebook in the Kickstarter version? Have you had your Kickstarter? Has it fulfilled it? You know, are you happy with your purchase? And by all means, let me know your thoughts on the game as well. Until next time, remember, it's only a game, and I'll see you up in Stratos for the next Broken Meeple video. Take care.